I helped my dad and stepmom move, only to find out they didn't invite me to their housewarming party. Hi, so I ruined my dad's housewarming party a couple of days ago, but with good reason. Hear me out before making any judgments. I'm a 26-year-old male, and I lost my mother when I was 5 in a freak accident. My dad stayed single for a long time, and he didn't start dating again until I was 13, so he and I were very close. It stayed that way until he started dating my stepmom, Nora, when I was 15. They dated for a couple of years before getting married. I always had a weird feeling that Nora didn't like me, but she behaved normally, so I didn't make a fuss about it. After they got married, we lived together until I moved out for college. When I came back home after graduation to live with them until I found a job, things were different. Nora was openly hostile towards me. I tried talking to my dad, but he excused her behavior, saying she was going through some family troubles. I moved out as soon as I could and minimized contact with her after that. I continued visiting my dad but kept my distance from Nora. Last week, my dad called me to tell me that they were moving into a new house. I was surprised because his business hadn't been doing well for years, but I congratulated him and even offered to help with the move, which he accepted. I helped them move, and things seemed fine until I found out from relatives that they were throwing a housewarming party, and I wasn't invited. When I confronted my dad, he admitted Nora didn't want me there. She said this new house represented a fresh start for them, and she didn't want to invite past mistakes, which apparently included me. My dad claimed he didn't agree with her words but respected her wishes. I was furious. We had a big argument, and I decided to cut them out of my life because of how toxic this was. Later, Maya reached out to ask why I wasn't attending the party. She thought my dad's excuse about a business retreat was odd. I told her the real reason, and she was shocked. We realized my dad had been lying to everyone about why I wasn't attending, saying I had a business retreat when, in reality, I wasn't even invited. And also told me something else. Apparently, my dad had borrowed money from his business associate, Sam, to buy the house. He told Sam it was to help me with my expenses, but he really used it to buy the house. My dad had lied to everyone, saying he had saved up for it, when in fact he was still in debt. My aunt suggested I confront him, and after thinking it over, I decided to call Sam and tell him everything. Sam was furious when he learned the truth. He had only lent my dad the money because he thought it was for me, but now he found out my dad had lied to him too. We devised a plan. On the day of the party, I showed up with Sam. My dad was shocked and tried to get us to leave quietly, but we didn't. We made a scene telling everyone the truth about how my dad had lied and borrowed money under false pretenses. Since then, my dad hasn't stopped calling me, begging me to apologize and fix his ruined reputation. But I don't care. He hasn't even apologized to me for how he treated me, and he doesn't deserve my help. I talked to my roommate about what happened, but he didn't agree with what I did. He thinks I should have just cut my dad off and left it alone. We argued about it, and now we're not on speaking terms. I'm starting to question if I did the right thing. Was I wrong for showing up at the housewarming party uninvited and exposing my dad's lies? Edit. Some people wanted more context about my relationship with Nora. Honestly, we didn't have much of a relationship. I always had a weird vibe from her, but she was civil at first. After I came back from college, she became openly rude. My dad never defended me, even though it happened right in front of him. I suspect she started acting this way because she wanted me out of the house, and when I left she was happy. I've never given her any reason to dislike me, but for some reason she does. As for my aunt, she's always been like a second mother to me. She's the only family member who has supported me through all of this. She didn't expose my dad herself because she didn't want to create tension with my grandparents, but I didn't mind doing it myself. Update 1. I spoke to my roommate after a few days of not talking. I tried explaining how betrayed I felt by my father, but he still thinks I acted out of pettiness. He told me he didn't want to be friends with someone who creates drama. We ended up in another fight, and I decided to move out. I'm looking for a new place and plan to cut ties with him completely. My family situation hasn't improved either. My dad is still trying to contact me, but I'm ignoring him. The rest of my family isn't speaking to him, but they aren't talking to me either. My grandparents believe I was wrong for humiliating my dad in public, and they've convinced other relatives to take their side. The only person who's still in touch with me is my aunt. I'm okay with that. I've lost most of my paternal family, but I'm better off without them. Update 2. It's been a month since my last post. I've moved out and blocked my ex-roommate on all social media. The last weeks living together were awful, and it hurt that he didn't even say goodbye when I left. My friends support my decision, and I'm happier now that I've cut him out of my life. As for my family, I haven't spoken to my dad since the incident. My aunt is still in touch, but the rest of my family continues to shun me, believing I was just as wrong as my father for making things public. My mother's side of the family has been supportive, and I'm content with that. I've realized that I don't need my dad or my paternal family's validation anymore, and I'm better off without them. Update 3. It's been about 3 months since my life took a complete turn after what went down at my dad's housewarming party. I'm not going to sugarcoat at everything that has happened. When I decided to expose my dad's lies in front of his friends and family, I thought that would give me some closure, that the sense of betrayal I felt would somehow lessen. But if anything, it's only gotten heavier. Not because I regret what I did know, I still stand by my actions, but because of everything that came after it. For starters, I never thought my relationship with my father would be completely severed. After the blowout at the party, my dad went into damage control mode, and he bombarded me with calls, texts, and even tried reaching me through relatives. He kept telling me how I had humiliated him in front of everyone and destroyed the reputation he worked so hard to build. What reputation, though? The one built on lies and borrowed money. I didn't respond to any of his messages, and as much as I wanted to block him, I just couldn't. Some part of me still wanted to hear him beg for forgiveness, though I knew it was unlikely. He never apologized for how he treated me or for calling me his past mistake. His focus was entirely on the embarrassment I caused him, and it made me realize how deep his selfishness ran. But the fallout wasn't just between my father and me. As I mentioned in my last update, most of my family, particularly on my dad's side, has taken his side, or at least they've distanced themselves from me. My grandparents' people I once had some level of respect for have become especially vocal about how I was equally to blame for the drama. It's infuriating. They can't seem to see that my dad was the one who manipulated his way into getting that house, that he lied to his closest friends, and most disgustingly used me as a pawn in his scheme. Yet somehow to them I'm the villain for airing his dirty laundry. The rest of the family followed suit, and it's almost like they've erased me from their lives entirely. I haven't been invited to any family gatherings, and the few cousins I used to be close to no longer return my calls. I've become the family outcast, all because I decided to hold my father accountable. The only person who stayed by my side through all of this is my aunt, bless her soul. She's always been a righteous woman, someone who values honesty above all else. When everything first went down, she had my back, and even now she's still in contact with me regularly. In fact, she's gone a step further and cut ties with our grandparents too. She told me that after reflecting on everything, she realized she didn't need their approval anymore. If they could turn on me so easily for standing up for myself. I never expected her to take such a drastic step. We've grown even closer since the fallout, and she's been a constant source of support, both emotionally and practically. Speaking of practical matters, I've completely moved out of the apartment I shared with my former roommate. That situation was another emotional disaster. We had been close friends for years, and I thought he'd understand where I was coming from. Even though we lived together for a few more weeks after our falling out, it was like living with a ghost. We didn't speak to each other, and there were times when he'd go out of his way to avoid even being in the same room as me. It was painful not just because of the silence, but because it made me realize how quickly someone who was supposed to be a close friend could turn on you. When I finally moved out, he didn't even say goodbye. We had spent years as close friends, yet when I packed my last box and walked out the door, there was nothing, just silence. That was when I knew that chapter of my life was truly over. I've since blocked him on all social media and cut him out of my life completely. I don't have the energy to hold on to people who don't stand by me when things get tough. Looking back, I think my decision to expose my dad shook him, and maybe it was too much for him to handle. He came from a picture-perfect family, but whatever the reason, I've made peace with the fact that we are no longer friends. Now, living on my own has been both liberating and lonely. For the first time in years, I'm not sharing my space with anyone, and it's given me a lot of time to reflect on everything. I've found a new apartment and it's in a pretty nice area. It's smaller than the one I shared with my old roommate, but it's cozy and I'm starting to make it feel like home. I've thrown myself into redecorating, filling the place with things that bring me peace, plants, art, books. It's become my sanctuary, a place where I can escape from the chaos that's been swirling around me these past few months. I didn't realize how much I needed this kind of solitude until I had it. The downside, of course, is that being alone means I have a lot of time to think. And sometimes that's not the best thing. I replay everything that happened with my dad over and over again in my head, trying to figure out if there was a point where things could have gone differently. Could I have handled the situation better? Should I have just cut my dad off and moved on quietly instead of making a scene at the party? These thoughts keep me up at night sometimes, and even though I know deep down that I did what I felt was right, the weight of it all is still there. It's hard not to question yourself when the people you thought would stand by you have abandoned you. My mother's side of the family has been my saving grace. They've rallied around me, offering their support without hesitation. My grandparents on that side especially have been a beacon of love and understanding. They've reminded me that I did nothing wrong, that standing up for myself and calling out my father's lies wasn't something to be ashamed of. My maternal grandparents have always treated my father with respect, even after my mom passed, and to see how he's repaid that kindness by distancing himself from them too well, that's just another reminder of the kind of person he's become. I'm grateful that I still have them in my life and I'm spending more time with them than ever before. They've become the family I lean on, and honestly, they've helped me start to heal from all of this. But healing is a slow process. I'm still angry, still hurt, and there are days when the weight of it all feels unbearable. I've tried to focus on my career, on building a life that feels fulfilling outside of the drama with my family. I've taken up new hobbies, thrown myself into work, and even started seeing a therapist to help me process everything. Talking to someone who isn't involved in the situation has been surprisingly helpful. My therapist has helped me unpack a lot of the guilt and self-doubt I've been carrying around, and it's been a relief to have a space where I can be completely honest about how I'm feeling. Still, there's no escaping the fact that I've lost people I thought would always be in my life. My father, my extended family, even my old roommate, they're all gone now, and it's left a hole that's hard to fill. But I'm trying. I'm building a new life. It's lonely at times, but it's also freeing. I'm learning to stand on my own 2 feet, and while it's not easy, I know that in the long run it's what's best for me. As for my dad, I haven't heard from him in a while. After his initial barrage of calls and messages, he seems to have given up on trying to get me to apologize. I think he's finally realized that I'm not going to back down, that I'm not going to sweep everything under the rug just to make him feel better. And honestly, I'm okay with that. I don't need him in my life anymore, not if he's going to continue treating me like I'm a mistake from his past. I deserve better than that. So that's where things stand now. I'm still picking up the pieces, still figuring out what my life looks like without the people I've lost. But I'm getting there. Slowly but surely I'm moving on. And while the road ahead is uncertain, I'm determined to keep walking it one step at a time. Final update. It's been nearly a year since the events that completely shattered my relationship with my father, and now I can finally say that I'm at peace. It wasn't easy getting here, but looking back, I realize that everything I went through was necessary for my growth. I've learned more about myself in these past 12 months than I ever thought possible, and now I'm ready to close this chapter of my life for good. After months of silence from my father, I came to terms with the fact that we'll likely never have the relationship I once hoped for. I've stopped waiting for the apology that will never come. He made his choice, and I made mine. I've realized that some wounds don't heal, and that's okay. It's not my job to fix the broken pieces of our family dynamic anymore. I've let go of the idea that I need his approval or his love to be whole. It took me a long time to accept that, but once I did, it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. My family on my father's side remains distant, but that no longer bothers me the way it used to. I've stopped reaching out. For the first time in my life, my aunt is still a huge part of my life. Her decision to cut ties with the rest of the family was brave. Living on my own has been a transformative experience. I've become more independent, more in tune with my own needs and desires. My apartment, once a place that felt like an escape from my problems, is now a sanctuary where I can truly be myself. I've filled it with memories, with things that bring me joy, and it's become a reflection of the person I've grown into. I've even adopted a dog, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the courage to. His name is Leo, and he's brought a new kind of happiness into my life that I didn't know I needed. Work has been going well too. Throwing myself into my career was one of the ways I coped with the emotional fallout of everything, but it's become more than just a distraction. I've found a sense of purpose and fulfillment that I hadn't felt before. I'm proud of the work I'm doing, and it feels good to be building something for myself without relying on anyone else's approval. I've even been offered a promotion, something I never would have expected just a year ago. It feels like a validation of all the hard work I've put in, not just at the job, but in my personal growth too. Therapy has continued to be a cornerstone of my healing process. My therapist helped me work through the anger and resentment I had toward my father, and more importantly, she helped me find forgiveness not for him. I spent so long questioning whether I had done the right thing, but now I've let go of that self-doubt. I know in my heart that standing up for myself was the right thing to do, even if it came at a cost. I'm proud of the person I've become, and I don't need anyone else's validation to know that I'm worthy of love and respect. As for my mother's side of the family, they've remained my rock through all of this. My maternal grandparents, my cousins, my uncles and aunts, they've filled the void that my father's side left behind. I've spent more time with them than I ever have before, and it's been a reminder that family isn't just about blood, it's about the people who stand by you, who lift you up when you're down. I'm so grateful for them, and I've made it a point to invest in those relationships, knowing now just how precious they are. And then there's my father. About 2 months ago, I got a letter from him. Not an email, not a text, but an old-fashioned handwritten letter. It was the first time I'd heard from him in almost a year. I wasn't sure if I wanted to read it, but curiosity got the better of me. In the letter, he didn't apologize, not in the way I had once hoped he would, but he did acknowledge that things between us had changed for good. He wrote about how difficult the past year had been for him, how he had lost friends and respect after the truth about his financial situation came out. But in true fashion, he still managed to make it about himself, talking about how much he had sacrificed to build the life he wanted. There was no mention of the pain. He caused me no real accountability for his actions. Reading the letter didn't hurt me the way I thought it might. Instead, it reinforced the decision I had made to cut him out of my life. It was clear to me that my father hadn't changed. He was still the same man, unwilling to take responsibility for the damage he caused. So I didn't respond. I tucked the letter away, not out of anger, but because I knew that nothing he could say would change the way things were. I've moved on, and I don't need closure from him to feel at peace. Now I'm focusing on the future. I've started dating again, something I wasn't sure I was ready for, but it's been a good experience. I'm taking things slow, learning to trust again, and enjoying the process of getting to know someone new. It's a reminder that life goes on, that there are still good things waiting for me even after all the heartache I've endured. This will be my last update. I'm ready to put this chapter of my life behind me and move forward. The pain, the betrayal, the loss, it's all part of my story, but it doesn't define me anymore. I'm stronger now, more resilient, and more sure of who I am and what I want out of life. I've learned that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that lead to the most growth. Cutting ties with my father was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was also one of the most freeing. I'm no longer bound by the need to please him or anyone else. I'm living for myself now, and that's all that matters. So here's to new beginnings. Here's to letting go of the past and embracing the future with open arms. I don't know what's ahead, but I do know that whatever comes my way, I'm ready for it. I've survived the storm, and now I'm ready to bask in the sunlight of the life I'm building for myself. Thank you for following my journey and for all the support you've given me along the way. This is the end of one story, but the beginning of another, and I can't wait to see what happens next.